Both divers were trapped inside the cave. The exit was blocked by debris. Visibility was so poor that they couldn't even see their own hands properly, and now they only had a few minutes of oxygen left. One diver went back to look for an alternate route, while the others stayed near the debris. After about 5 minutes, when the first diver returned, what he saw was truly unbelievable. Look closely. Cave diving is very different from regular scuba diving. In scuba diving, usually, people go into open water where if something goes wrong, a push from the diver can bring you straight to the surface. But in cave diving, there are rocks above and on the sides, and only a narrow path to follow. If you run out of oxygen, your equipment fails, or you forget the way, it's basically game over. Cave diving is a unique spot with an extraordinarily high casualty rate. In swimming, there are about 1.77 deaths per 100,000 participants. Similarly, in base jumping, there are 43. And when it comes to cave divers, for every 100,000, there have been 138 casualties among divers. Every year, about 25 to 30 divers lose their lives at this spot worldwide. The number is low because only a few people do cave diving. Sherlock Springs in Florida is like a big table, with some tunnels ending abruptly and others leading straight to death. The cave depth is between 80 to 120 feet. The water temperature is always around 22 degrees Celsius, and visibility is usually crystal clear. It was the morning of November 17, 1991. The weather was pleasant, with gentle sunlight sparkling on the water. Some pro divers from WKPP, the Woodville Cast Plane Project, set out on a mission. Their goal was to explore new routes in the garage and map them out. Among these drivers were two newcomers, Bill and Parker. They were friends, both crazy about adventure. For them, this was more than just a dive. It was a chance to push their limits and set a new record. But little did they know, this journey was about to become the biggest test of their lives. When most people hear the name Sherlock Springs, they think of it as a small pond. Imagine it looks like just a 56-meter wide round lens from above, with a depth of only 9 meters. But the real story lies beneath. It's a limestone cave system that goes as deep as 91 meters. Tunnels, chambers, and inner pathways make you feel like you're in another world. This cave is part of the Wakulla Cave system, which is considered one of the largest underwater cave networks in the world. From the entrance, there's a narrow passage called the Scars Restriction Zone. It's so tight that only one diver can pass through at a time. It can be so narrow that while passing through, the driver's shoulder and the tank actually scrape against the rocks. But as soon as this zone ends, an amazing sight opens up, like a highway tunnel underwater. This place is both beautiful and dangerous. That day, the WKPP team divided the divers into 4 groups for their mission. Everyone had different responsibilities to make sure no mistakes happened. The first group was the one that stayed on the surface near the entrance of the cave. Their job was to monitor the entire mission, keeping track of time and responding immediately in emergencies. This team acted like a safety line for everyone above. The second group was responsible for the drivers who had to place the decompression tanks in the right spots. These cylinders were hung where drivers could get extra oxygen while coming back up to breathe. This was the backbone of the mission because without decompression stops, no driver could come back alive. The third group handled the lines and safety checks. They made sure the guidelines were properly followed. They were giving backup and making sure the team that went ahead had a clear and safe path. The fourth team was the explorers, Bill and Parker's crew, whose actual job was to explore the cave. Around 10 in the morning, the whole team got into the water. Bill and Parker checked their scooters and tanks, said a small prayer, and then dove deep into the cave. About 20 meters down, they met George, who was part of the depression team. Moving a bit further, they reached the Scars Restriction Zone. Adjusting their buoyancy and using their scooters, they kept going. Soon they arrived at a place called Wakulla. They entered a big chamber. The scene was so amazing, it felt like a person was swimming in the open sky. Within 40 minutes, they reached Grand Canyon 4 and, as planned, started descending. The tunnel was narrow, but the scooters were working perfectly. After 25 minutes of hard effort, they reached the lower Wakulla room, where they found a way up. Everything up to this point was completely normal. They even felt very free inside the tight cave. Seeing the oxygen levels drop here, both decided to turn back. But little did they know, their freedom might end right there. When they got back to the Grand Canyon bend, the tunnel had completely changed. The water was all muddy. Visibility was so bad that the divers couldn't even see their own hands. The Grand Canyon wasn't anything like it had been just minutes before. It was a real warning sign that both Bill and Parker could clearly feel. Finding the way ahead was tough. They kept holding on to the guideline, thinking they just had to go a little further to reach the scar restriction zone. But soon they realized that ahead, path was blocked. A pile of dirt had blocked the way up, and the guideline was buried under the debris. Their oxygen tanks were almost empty, and seeing this, both of them started to panic. Bill signaled Parker and wrote on his slate, "Wait here, I'll check the line." He went back to the turn to make sure they weren't on the wrong path, but after confirming with the line marker, he found out this was actually the exit route. Bill hurried back to tell Parker, but only after 5 minutes. When he came back, he saw that Parker wasn't there. Bill was now terrified inside the dark car. He shone his torch all around, but there was no sign of Parker in the dust clouds. Then he noticed a little water trickling down from the pile of dirt. He thought maybe Parker had slipped through there to the other side, but there wasn't much time to think because the oxygen level was almost gone. He started digging through the dirt himself. Every second felt like death was closing in on him. The dirt, it was only 2 meters long, but for Bill, it felt like a journey of miles. Finally, he managed to make a space and squeeze inside. The tunnel was now turning upwards. Bill saw a regulator hanging from the guideline, but ignored it because his own oxygen was running low. He just held his breath and kept moving forward. Eventually, he reached the depression station at 30 meters deep and took a deep breath from the oxygen tank. He thought everything would be fine now. But then his eyes caught Parker's oxygen tank hanging there completely untouched. He wasn't there. I mean, Parker never came here. If Parker wasn't near the rubble and dirt pile, and he didn't come up either, then where the heck did he go? Bill's heart just broke. He started feeling like maybe his friend wasn't alive anymore. At that moment, George from the rescue team came down. Bill wrote on a slate to tell him that Parker was probably dead. George tried to get Bill to come back up, but Bill was so shocked he didn't want to go back without Parker. George went back up, called in some other drivers, and then he was forcibly taken up the bill. Parker's absence shocked everyone outside the cave. The divers went back into the cave to check, but there was no trace of him at the spot where he had disappeared. They only found his regulator and cylinder lying separately. The next morning, Parker's body was found in the upper part of the cave, showing that he had left his gear behind and was wearing only a wetsuit. But why did he take off his gear? Maybe he thought buoyancy would bring him up, but he was only a few meters away from the decompression tank. He lost consciousness and died right there. Years later, when scientists investigated, the real reason came to light. It was found that when the divers went inside and were working at a depth of 20 meters, their bubbles kept collecting under the cave ceiling. These bubbles slowly reduced the buoyancy effect on the ceiling, weakening it over time. When George came out, a part of the ceiling collapsed behind him. That collapse caused a landslide, blocking the way. The investigation also revealed that Parker, while returning, got trapped in the debris. Behind the block, he realized that this was the way. Without wasting any time, he started digging with his hands, so that when Bill came back, the path would already be made. But maybe during this, his oxygen ran low, and he didn't even get the chance to tell Bill that he had made a way for him. If Parker hadn't made the path and sacrificed his life that day, Bill might have died behind that rubble. Hope you all like and share this video. We really appreciate your loving comments. Thanks a lot.